But a real temple requires all of these deposits and gem deposits and under every corner, and there's a massive amount of ritual that goes into building a real temple. It's quite amazing. Oftentimes in a real temple they'll put the last pada out, the last energy belt out will actually be stone itself. It'll be an ayadied stone, which technically then the mother wall is on the outside, but the ayadied stone is vibrant stone. It's perfected stone. And it's where the material world lives, right? So
that may sound kind of corny, that a building needs to have adoration, but really, ultimately, if you think about it, look what's happening now with all these homes that are going into foreclosure. People are moving out, leaving them vacant. Within a couple of years, nature's taking over. The grass is growing through the concrete, the paint's peeling off. Buildings need TLC all the way along. And when people live there, they put their attention on it. I mean, it seems like it's kind of a mundane example that you have to spray paint and repaint and weed whack and do the garden and stuff like that. But it's true.
Yep.
That's, it's true on a subtle level as well as a gross level.
A built space is a living form to some extent. How much life it has is dependent on the purity of the measure and the orientation. So any house wants life, and it struggles for life. And an impure form that doesn't meet the requirements, that's not Vastu compliant, is struggling for life. And the life that it takes is the life of the owner. The energy that's drained is the life of the owner. And you feed the house. In a Vastu house, the house is compliant with the Shastric measure and orientation. And so that house feeds you. That house is self-effulgent. It manifests its own energy, manifests by its own nature. And so that house feeds you. And so we see houses that are left, even if they don't deteriorate when they're empty, you go in and you don't feel life there. You don't feel any living. And the paint may last for 15 years if you're living in a house, but if you're not, the paint seems to deteriorate. It's very interesting how quickly this very same material disintegrates without the human life. So most of humanity is living in a sick building. Not only sick from lack of good building materials. By the way, speaking of that, I recommend that every one of you get Paula's book. What the title is,
Prescriptions for a Healthy House.
Prescriptions for a Healthy House.
Best book on the subject you could ever read. Should be a part of your library as a reference.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
Thanks, guys. I'll
Well then.
pay you later.
No, it's true.
it's really a great book. And she's had a reprinting, right?
I've written it 3 times now.
Rewritten it for the 3rd time. And Paula, by the way, is a biology teacher, building biology, which has to do with healthy houses. And that's not a topic that we will be covering now. I'm hoping later to throw it into the curriculum, because Mayan was a biologist. He was an eco-builder, a natural builder. And while we don't consider materials in that way in Vastu as part of the Shastric recommendations, although there are certain material recommendations in the Shastras, we don't consider it because Mayan didn't have to consider it. It was part of life in those days. Although he did say stay away from factories, so don't build near factories. So there must have been some kind of factories. Don't build near a blacksmith shop.
Graveyards.
A graveyard. So
hospitals.
He did consider environmental factors, but they weren't working with formaldehyde most likely, and
Guaranteed.
Pardon?
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. And
Got a
You know-
really good deal on the Superfund site.
right, they weren't dealing with herbicides, pesticides, and all the other homicides that we build with.
Nice.
They had natural things, and he was an ecologist. He said that every tree you cut, you plant another tree. That was the rule. And you cut a tree very respectfully. We've spoken about this. The stopity, or the tree cutter, does a ceremony, and the command is that they have a sharp axe. The axe has to be sharpened so that it's less painful for the tree. So there was an understanding that everything is a living and vibrant being. Anyway,
Another thing that's really prevalent, and you read about it all the time, especially in the spring, is how many people build below flood zone,
Yeah.
in a floodplain.
Yeah.
The whole city of Nashville was under like 6-8 feet of water downtown.
Was it?
A whole city.
look at New Orleans.
New
Yeah.
Orleans.
And that's one of the Vastu site selection demandments, that you not live on swampy, marshy land. You don't build on swampy, marshy land. Even infill, you don't fill in. Why? Because there's an over-prevalence of water element.
Look at the whole Sacramento Delta. If that levee system were to be compromised, and everybody fears that it is, if we had an earthquake or something, thousands and thousands of square miles would be inundated with water.
Yeah.
And it's all man-made, but nobody thought what would happen if it breached.
Right?
So, question about the David's cottage.
I beg your
I
pardon?
have a question about David's cottage.
Yes.
So when we went there last year, he had plants in there, and which is a no-no, correct? Or not? I'm just
Well-
wondering if you're adoring a temple, like, could you have some candles and a little altar in there?
Yeah.
Is that okay in this
Sure.
situation?
Sure.
That are permanently sort of in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stoppity, I was woke up, I was awake a lot last night, and I was going through some old emails that he had sent, and he was mentioning that he's built a temple to Shiva, he's built a temple to Vishnu, he's built a temple to Shiva, he's built a Shiva Vishnu temple, and and he's built Ganapati, he's built many kinds of temples around the world, but his desire is to build a temple with no God, because he says the temple is God. It's a form of God. And so that's what we're building. My desire in building temple cottages. Other people have not been building temple cottages. This is a new thing that we're doing. It's not been something that's done, especially in the West. Anywhere, actually. These temple cottages is an Om S&T thing. And my secret desire is that there be no deities placed in these buildings, and that there be no markings, particularly of any deity or of any specific religious belief other than Ionic science and technology. That these are religious-free buildings. That there is no deity but Brahman represented by this form.
But don't each Ayati members have a deity presiding over them?
They do, but the
That
deity
innately-
is in energy form. It's not,
Right. So that's okay.
a god that's sitting on a chair somewhere,
Right.
giving thou shalt.
A religious free zone. Who would have thought?
It's a religious free zone. Yep. Yes.
I know we can't do it right now, but can you cover